we're finally getting some cryptids. Or at least one, I guess. Same thing.
Welcome to the voicemail box of your local friendly Necromancer. Our hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. Please leave a detailed message on which human, animal, or vicious hellbeast you would like to resurrect. Your call will be returned within 3 business days to book an appointment. Please ensure to have your down payment of your soul or firstborn child, or the soul or firstborn child of another being if you do not have one, at the time of your appointment. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Local Necromancer's Coffee Break, a podcast where we transcend this boring-ass human realm to absorb all of the paranormal juices. My name is Wrenna, I am your host, I'm an author, paranormal investigator, and now a graphic audio voiceover person? Voice actress? What the hell would you call me? I just kind of do whatever fits my fancy for the day. And eventually I might stop switching around my background. If you are just listening to the audio edition of this, and you have been just listening to the audio, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. And that's probably a good thing, not gonna lie. I have changed my background, location, everything, probably every episode. I don't think I filmed the same episode in the same location twice, except maybe like episodes 2 and 3. I'm thinking. So today, if you're only listening through audio, I'm actually back in my main office room. I decided to move away from the cool bookcase behind me. It was just not overly productive for the amount of space that I have. It didn't really make sense. It made things a little too crowded. Not that this is all that much better, but it's something I can at least leave set up throughout the week and then come record when I'm able to, instead of having to move a bunch of furniture around every single time I record. I only had to do it once now, I say, as I probably change the backdrop next episode. But for those who can't see the background and you only can hear me, basically this time I am on a couch. It's nice and cozy. I've got pillows, I've got coffee table, an end table, because I forgot what that was and I almost called it a coffee table. I've got my phoenix above me, coffee markers, Eva, Emrys. Did I get you right? I did. I pointed to the right ones. Didn't think I'd do that. Gotta figure out what to do with my Jonas wall, because between Jonas wall and Jonas hoodie, this looks like a fan podcast. It's not. I swear it's still paranormal. I actually wasn't even intending to wear this hoodie in particular. I was going to be wearing actually one of my Haunted Nights hoodies, but right before I was going to start filming earlier today, which was like probably 5 or 6 hours ago, my giant Saint Bernard decided, oh no, Mom, I'm gonna give you snuggles. Thanks, squirrel. She also decided to snuggle the couch, so nice, gray blanket covering all of the slobber and hair that she got on the couch. So it's been an interesting day trying to get everything set up, but it's been fun nonetheless. But since I had to change my clothes, I'm like, oh shoot, I put on my Cup of Joe hoodie from back when Joe Jonas had his own travel show. And then I looked behind me just now, like in my little viewfinder down here, and I'm like, oh shit. But that does remind me, Joe Jonas has been increasingly interested in collaborating with TikTokers. So, Joe, where the hell are you? Get over here. Get on this podcast. Come tell the story about your old haunted house. I know you've got them. I've heard the stories on other interviews of yours. I would love to know more. So if everybody could just be amazing and tag Joe Jonas anywhere that you see this on social media, I would love you forever. Let's get him on here. Joe, this is officially your challenge. Come on the podcast. Not only do we have fun and have ghosts, but we have coffee. Like, come on, it doesn't get any better than that, right? Okay, fan moment over. I actually do have an episode planned for the future about haunted celebrities, so it would actually be wicked cool if he would be like so gracious as to just spend 5 minutes talking about his old, haunted stories. I think it'd be hilarious, but shot in the dark, so probably won't happen. But we'll eventually cover that anyway on the podcast. It just, wishful thinking, right? So for today, I'm doing a little different plan than normal, which is my normal mantra, so that actually makes this a normal plan. I swear in my head these plans make sense, and then the words come out of my mouth and I realize, nope, they don't. But I decided to split up my cryptids episode. I was originally going to do a bunch together, and I'm like, no, it's kind of fun to just do one at a time, give each cryptid its own time in the spotlight. If it's a short one, I can just read other encounters, talk about other things in the paranormal world. So today I'm only focusing on one, and it is the one that I really wanted to focus on the most. I actually have talked about it a little bit on social media, but I haven't been able to do a full video because Bunny Man happened, and we know the kind of rabbit hole that sent me down. But this story of this particular cryptid is kind of short, so at the end of the episode we are going to be reading 2 listener encounters that were submitted, and I'm very excited to do that because one of them may be a pretty good friend of mine, so that's going to be a lot of fun. I have not read either story yet, but I know that my friend in particular has had a lot of really wild paranormal experiences, so I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing what she has written to me. And shall we begin our legend? Also, if you haven't yet, because opening my iPad just reminded me, Echo of Moths now has its own designated podcast. And because my screen's gonna be a little hard to see, I'm going to go ahead and put an image of the cover art up. It was done by an amazing author friend of mine, an artist named Wrenna Solace? I'm not sure how you pronounce your last name for your pen name. I'm really sorry. I should have asked you that before I started recording, and I didn't, so yay. But she is amazing. She recently did some fan art from episode 1 of Echo of Moths, and I approached her and I was like, hey, I know you also did the channel icon that I use. Would you be down for a commission for the actual, like, cover art for the podcast of Echo of Moths? And she was super down for it. And she did the most beautiful art of Scylla that I have ever seen. It's the only art of Scylla I've ever seen. I'm just talking myself into so many holes today. Oh my god. But her art of Scylla just brought the character to life so much. It made me so happy. You guys have no idea. Episode 1 is out right now. I'm not sure if episode 2 will be up or not by the time this podcast episode goes up, but I'm hoping to get it up within the next few days if it's not already up by the time you're watching this. I've got many episodes planned. It's going to be a wild, wild ride. Very excited to see what you guys think of it. And I'm hopefully going to have an update soon on a release date for the Vision audio drama. I'm very much at work on it. I'm just working out a few little details before I actually drop a release date, but I should have that before the end of the month. So be prepared for an announcement about that. Vision is definitely my baby. Echo of Moths is too, but like Vision was the book that got me back into writing after a long time of not writing, which maybe I'll talk about someday. With this being a paranormal podcast, I'm not sure if you guys are really interested in hearing as much about my writing side of things. Like, audio dramas are one thing because it's cool to listen to and you get the creepy atmosphere, but just sitting down talking about writing, if that is something you're interested in, drop a comment below and I will absolutely talk about writing sometime on this podcast. I just don't want to stray too far from the paranormal theme if people aren't interested in that. And without further ado, now, again, I get so off topic. It's terrible, I'm sorry, but I swear now we will get to the meat of this episode. And that brings us to the story of the Squonk, Pennsylvania's most elusive and relatable cryptid. Now, as I said, I have covered the Squonk on social media because the bunny man kind of stole all the attention for an episode, so I did it short form, but I definitely knew I wanted to revisit the Squonk in an actual podcast episode because it deserves it. The Squonk is amazing. Fucking love this cryptid. It's one of my favorites. Like, it deserves an episode. That totally wasn't the entire reason that this got an episode of its own, because I wanted the Squonk to have its time in the spotlight, even though that's kind of counterintuitive considering what the Squonk is. Whoops. Our tale begins in 1910 when a book titled Fearsome Creatures of the Lumberwoods appeared on shelves of various booksellers. This parody-style field guide featured various legends from the United States and Canada and introduced folks to a lesser-known Pennsylvanian cryptid, the Squonk. With ill-fitting skin that sags and wrinkles, covered in warts and blemishes, the Squonk is less fearsome and more real. Many publications view this cryptid as a pig-like creature with tears welling eternally in its eyes. Now, the Squonk, or the Squonk-eye? What the hell would the pearl be of that? Anyway, the Squonk-eye originated in desert regions before migrating to swampy areas, seeming to follow groups of logging camps. When these loggers eventually traversed to the hemlock forests of Pennsylvania, the Squonksies followed. Now, if we know anything about cryptids and urban legends, they usually change over time, much like the bunny man who went from a disgruntled citizen who just really hated people on his property, same, to an asylum escapee murdering teenagers by the local bridge. I mean, it was quite a jump. And I've noticed that with other cryptids, like they start as this one thing and then they evolve over time. They can look different, they act different. It's just kind of the nature of cryptids and urban legends. It's like a very long game of telephone. But the Squonk is a rare creature that doesn't follow this pattern of telephone. Its appearance hasn't changed since its discovery. Still loose skin that doesn't fit, warts, blemishes, tears, and webbed toes, but only on their left feet. They've even been given the species of, God, I didn't think about having to pronounce this. Yeah, would not be a good time to mention I'm dyslexic. The species is Lacrymocorpus dissolvinus. God only knows I didn't pronounce that right. And its name actually means tears, body, and dissolve. Yes, dissolve. Because the Squonk wants no notability. It doesn't want to be perceived, and honestly, same. And for all my fellow people who also hate being perceived, I think we'll all agree that the Squonk has one power we would all love: to dissolve into itself in a puddle of tears, and then vanish from existence. I said it was relatable. It is. It's very relatable. It moves about between dusk and dawn on nights when moonlight is obscured so that they have less chance of being seen or even of seeing themselves. On nights when the moon is brighter, they walk slowly, careful of their surroundings so they won't catch their own reflections on any reflective surface. If they were to even see themselves in a puddle, they would end up dissolving into tears at their own sight. But this doesn't mean that people haven't seen the Squonk, even if only for a brief period of time. Hunters in Pennsylvania have tried to stalk and capture them to no avail, following trails of tears and the faint wailing from squonks in the distance. But when they finally corner the creature, the squonk dissolves into itself and leaves behind a puddle of bubbling tears. One man, however, named J.P. Wentling, got closer to the squonk than anyone else. It isn't known how he approached the creature and convinced it to stay in its natural form, but he managed to coax the squonk into his sack with the intent to bring it home. But not far into his trek back home, the sack lightened and he opened the bag to find the liquid remains of his squonk friend. Which, I mean, is kind of valid. Like, dude just stuck you in a sack and tried to bring you home. Like, yeah, I'm gonna dissolve? Hell no, I'm not coming to your house. What the fuck? But ever since, folks from the Pocono Mountains to the Pittsburgh outskirts and even to the northern edges of the Allegheny National Forest have claimed to encounter the squonk, mostly by hearing its cries and finding tear-stained trails deep in the woods. Locally owned stores sell everything from squonk stickers to shirts, hats, plushies, you name it. Even scientists have hopped aboard the tail of this precious little fellow. They've categorized substances as chemical squonks when their solution is stable, but they stage their own decomposition after being captured in isolation. Now, I'm not a very sciencey person, so I don't entirely understand what any of that means, but a lot of my friends are sciencey, so hopefully you guys understand it. And I also think that it's kind of amusing that it actually made its way into scientific literature. That's wicked cool. Like, especially, like, you know, whether or not you believe the squonk is real, it's now used for science, and that's fantastic. Okay, admission time. For a very long time, I'd never heard of the squonk, and I actually grew up on the outskirts of the Allegheny National Forest, so you would have thought naturally that I would have seen this, and I actually grew up like right near a town where they sold squonk stuff, and I just never apparently paid attention to the fact that they were selling squonk items because I just never knew it existed until I got older and we moved, and then I was like, shit, and we moved away. I'm never gonna see the squonk. I would have gone squonk hunting, except less hunting because I probably wouldn't have shoved it in a sack. I would have like gone out into the Allegheny National Forest and been like, okay, squonk, let's be buddies because we're the same. I won't perceive you, you don't perceive me. We'll sit here in solitude, and if somebody finds us, we'll dissolve. Maybe bucket list. Maybe we go to the Allegheny National Forest and look for squonks. Now, when you get down to it, the squonk's legacy displays a lot of the human experience. We find flaws in ourselves that others see as good, and we'd rather shrink away into balls and slink through the darkness than risk being perceived in our most vulnerable states. Self-image is something so many of us struggle with, and we let ourselves be consumed by our own insecurities. It almost serves as a cautionary tale that, you know, if somebody comes up to you with a sack and tries to shove you inside, just dissolve into a puddle. It works. Self-defense lesson of the year right there! And that's something that I've always taken away from the squonk, as somebody who definitely grew up being very self-conscious and just hated people looking at me. I love the squonk. The squonk would have been my best friend, not gonna lie. And I think it's really cool to like talk about the story of the squonk, and you realize that, okay, even cryptids can be, you know, a little awkward and a little like hating people in a less violent way than the bunny man, because, you know, the bunny man was chopping heads and the squonk just kind of dissolves because he just doesn't want people, and like that shit's relatable. I would just love to know what the squonk is up to right now. Where is he? Coming out with me, squonk. It'd be cool. We'll have a slumber party. We'll sit here. I'll turn off my camera. We don't have to have you on camera. We'll just sit here and enjoy the solitude. But the squonk leads us into something that has nothing to do with the squonk, because, yeah, I don't know how to tie things together. I just pick things to talk about and hope shit works. I am going to read two different listener encounters. One is from a listener that I don't know, and the other one is from a listener who's a very good friend of mine, and I'm equally excited for both. So the first encounter that I have is from a listener named Nadia, with pronouns she, they, and she submitted, "I've told the story to other people before, and I'll probably tell this story to even more people after this." Totally valid. I do the same thing. Like, I've submitted stories to other podcasts and then been like, no, I'm too excited. I have to tell it on my own. And I will absolutely be submitting those to more podcasts in the future because I just get excited. It's natural. It's fine. Feel free. If any of you are considering like sending things into the podcast and you're like, oh no, I've already told somebody else, it's fine. You can send it to me. It's cool. I'll listen to it. Even if I've heard the story, like, this is somebody I even know, and like I've even heard whatever story it is that you want to send it to me. 90% of the time I forget about things 5 minutes after I'm told anyway, but even if it's something I remember, viewers aren't going to know it. It's going to be super fun. Feel free to submit absolutely anything. I would love to read it. This is about the time I was by myself in my room when I thought I saw my cousin from the corner of my eye. I don't know what I was doing at the time, but I was at my desk and I think I was studying, and I was very angry with my cousin. I don't remember why. And all of a sudden, from the open doorway, I saw what I thought was my cousin standing there in the doorway, just staring at me. She stood there for maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3. I got annoyed and I snapped at her, asking what did she want? But when I turned to look at her, she wasn't there. I went rushing down the stairs and I started asking my cousin, my dad, and my aunt if anybody else was upstairs a few minutes ago. They all told me, in no uncertain terms, that I was by myself upstairs for the past half hour and nobody went up there. What weirded me out the most is that she looked so much like my cousin, even down to the pajamas she was wearing. And this isn't the first time this has happened to me. This has happened multiple times in my life, where I would see something from the corner of my eye that would look like someone I knew or I was related to who were perfectly alive and well, but that was the one that stuck out to me. I've also had incidences of hearing disembodied voices from unfamiliar people calling my name or whispering to me, and there's been a couple of times where I feel like I've been touched, but nobody else was in the room. And it seems to run in the family, because I have multiple family members on both sides who have had similar experiences like this. It's weird, but we're used to it. Nadia, I love this. Okay, that's gotta be a mimic. Like, there's gotta be a mimic running around this house. Normally, like, mimics aren't cool, at least, like, in the sense that they tend to cause havoc and destruction, but honestly, I think it's cool because I'm like, oh my god, mimic! I don't know why. I love them. They're so different from a D&D mimics, but they all cause chaos, and that makes me happy. I love chaos. That's wicked cool. That's definitely, like, mimic territory right there, especially if it's other family members that are alive and well. To actually be your cousin, like, physically standing in the doorway, that definitely sounds like a mimic. The disembodied voices of unfamiliar people, it could just be maybe other spirits hanging around, or it could still be the same mimic. Maybe it's just mimicking other people that you don't know. Especially, like, the fact, not only have you experienced this multiple times, but your family too, so that tells me, like, either whatever this is very powerful, or you and your family might be a little bit sensitive to these things, which is awesome. I feel like these kinds of entities and spirits, they do gravitate towards people who are sensitive to them, because if they're constantly showing up for people who don't know they're there, they're not getting that attention, so they don't show up as much. And I feel like that's why a lot of people who are skeptics have a hard time getting, like, the evidence that they need to kind of believe a little more. I feel like, you know, some healthy skepticism is needed in this field, because, you know, if you believe everything, you fall for everything. But definitely, like, having a very open mind to things. Spirits can feel that, entities can feel that, and they do tend to gravitate a little more towards you for that. If that's something that you enjoy, I would suggest maybe tapping into it, because I think that sounds really cool. You could definitely have the potential to maybe tap into more. You know, if they know that you can sense them, they might be more willing to come to you. The only thing is, make sure you are protecting yourself, and if your family, you know, I don't know what your family believes about these things. I know that sometimes that can be a little awkward, and not everybody believes in these things, and it can make for some interesting discussions with people, so totally get that. But make sure you guys are protecting yourselves. Set boundaries with spirits. I feel like that's something that sometimes we do forget. It's very easy to forget, even as somebody that's been involved with paranormal for a lot longer than I've been here on YouTube. Something that's important that you absolutely can do and is effective is setting very clear and firm boundaries with spirits. We've had to do it here in our house because we have a lot of activity. Most of them are pretty chill. You can actually sometimes talk things out. We don't always realize things we do as humans are harmful to others, and so sometimes we just need to sit down and have a chat with spirits, and they'll calm down a little bit. I know I've talked a lot about the ghost that may or may not have pinned me down and dislocated my shoulder after we brought Catherine home, my doll. Oh my god, I never brought Catherine over. What the hell? Catherine, I'm sorry. Okay, we're gonna put her here. Catherine, if you have anything you'd like to interject, feel free. Set that down nice and gentle. It's obviously away from electronic devices, so if she goes off, that'd be cool. I actually can't see because I've got a light blocking my vision, so if her EMF goes off, unless I catch it out of the corner of my eye, I'm not gonna even know until I go to edit this later. But yeah, when I brought Catherine home, she flat out said, "I will protect you." And she has very much done that. I've noticed that a lot of the less benign spirit activity up here has calmed down drastically. Not long ago, we actually managed to contact the one spirit that in particular was the one that I believed did what he did to my shoulder, and it was very clear that he didn't realize what he did to me. And I truly believe that, like the vibes that I got from the whole situation talking to this spirit, while it was very scary in the moment and it's easy to get caught up in, oh my god, this thing hurt me, it's immediately bad. That's not always the case, because even as humans, we hurt each other and we don't always mean it. Sometimes we don't realize we've done it, and I feel like it's the same for spirits. They have a lot harder time communicating and talking to us, and I think sometimes we, even as investigators, forget that we can just talk to them. They were humans too. So he kind of almost seemed to apologize. We're gonna see how it goes. I feel like maybe he's gonna calm down. To anyone listening who's had trouble with spirits, communication is a really good place to start if you're feeling uncomfortable. So thank you so much, Nadia. I really enjoyed hearing that story. Everybody give them a round of applause because they're amazing. Thank you. And I hope to hear more stories from you. If you have them, feel free to submit as many as you'd like. Now, the next story is from a very, very good friend of mine. She goes by the name Loki online, pronouns she, her, and she is amazing. She is a very close writer friend of mine who has had a wild amount of paranormal experiences. So when Loki submitted something to the podcast to be read, I was like, hell yeah, I know it's gonna be good because she's got so many cool stories. And apparently it's one that I haven't heard yet because she's told me a lot of hers, and I'm very excited to hear a brand new Loki tale. So without further ado, let's dive into the story sent to us from Loki. I have plenty of paranormal encounters that both me and my family members have encountered. From candles floating across rooms, lanterns falling from sturdy shelves, and even feeling a hand grab my shoulder. I'll start off with one that both my dad and I encountered. We live in the South, and we're hunters. At the time of this story, I was 13 and had just started hunting deer on our family's land. We lived in the middle of 40 acres, with only a handful of neighbors. Most of them I had never met. Our hunting location was roughly a 2-mile walk on old dirt roads my father and uncle had made and kept clean from when they were teens. My dad and I went walking on what we called the Curvy Way, which was literally a winding road through undergrowth, cedar trees, and oak trees so thick you could only see a few feet inside. It was a familiar path, one we walked often during the daytime or drove down to get home. It was roughly 4 p.m. with plenty of light, and we made it to our deer stand with no issue. The location we hunted from was tucked in the tree line and looked down a fairly steep hill that was open. It was like staring down a barrel. There was a clear V through the hill bordered by trees, and at the bottom was the long way, which was the longest but most scenic route to get to my grandparents' house. And then, eventually, ours. On the other side of the road was our neighbor's fence that led to their acreage. They had no livestock, and it was overgrown. We saw nothing for the first 2 hours. By the time 6 p.m. started to hit, the sun began to go down and the atmosphere began to darken. It was at this point my dad and I saw a lone spike, a young buck, enter the V. It was too small to shoot, so we just watched it. It walked up the V, almost directly toward our spot. It crossed to our left and soon disappeared somewhere behind us. We were just excited we saw something. After about 5 minutes, we both heard something. Something was running. The young spike tore through the tree line right beside us and bolted down the V toward our neighbor's fence. I'm talking rocks were flying, it was running so fast. We didn't see anything at first. Not until it jumped the fence and this black shape followed after it. A second black shape tore off down the road. I don't know what they were to this day. They were sleek and agile, with no real shape to them. Oh my god. But I do know the first one leapt the fence like it wasn't even there. My dad swears to this day it wasn't a solid shape, but rather misty and left a trail of black mist in its wake. I keep seeing, Displacer Beast. I keep seeing a Displacer Beast, like, in my head. What? Needless to say, we didn't stay after that. We had to walk the 2 miles back to the house, in the dark, worrying that they were tracking us. Some might say they were mountain lions, and I won't deny the thought has crossed my mind. Loki, you know how I feel about mountain lions. You know how I feel about mountain lions, Loki. But they were solid black. What are the chances that there are 2 melanistic mountain lions in the same hunting area together? I can still remember the fear that ran through me on that walk home, knowing whatever they were had been near enough to chase a deer right back past us. How long had they been there? How long had they been watching? Had they seen us? Would they have chased us if the deer wasn't there? Loki, what? You know me and mountain lions. They've traumatized me since where the red fern grows when I was a child. Melanistic mountain lions themselves are bad enough, but the fact that these things had no solid shape and they had mist, and all I can see in my head are, you know, the displacer beasts, which are totally pleasant. I don't like this, Loki, but I also love it. I'm torn. Loki, that was an amazing story. So Loki is actually an amazing writer. I love her and I love her stories so much. Voxlock34 is her username on Wattpad. I might not write on there anymore, but I still love reading my friends' books. This year, she has entered multiple books into Wattpad's Open Novella contest, and one in particular is called The Lighthouse's Reflection. The Lighthouse's Reflection is like pirate fantasy romance, which I freaking love. Come on, you can't go wrong with pirates. I was absolutely a Killian Jones fan on Once Upon a Time, so yes, give me pirates. And the summary of her story says, a lone lighthouse keeper watches over the coast, tending to her light as the sea rages beyond. The storms are nothing new, neither is the solitude. She is content with the quiet rhythm of her life, the crash of waves against the cliffs, the scent of salt and parchment filling her days. But when a shipwreck leaves a battered stranger at her doorstep, the tide of her world begins to shift. The man is rough-edged, a relic of salt and shadow, with secrets hidden beneath his scars. He speaks of a past that the waves should have swallowed, of maps inked in the margins of forbidden books, of love letters lost to time. Trapped together by a storm that refuses to pass, they share stories by lantern light, one seeking refuge, the other searching for something long forgotten. Yet not all ghosts are content to stay buried, and not all storms end when the sky clears. Whispers of war linger in the distance, and the truth he carries may threaten the safe harbor she has built for herself. As the past and present begin to intertwine, she must decide, will she cling to the safety of her lighthouse, or will she risk everything to follow the reflection of something new? I am already obsessed with this. I'm super excited to see where she goes with this book. I love it. So if you guys want to support Loki, again, she is such a good friend of mine. I would love it if you went and checked out her stories, especially Lighthouse's Reflection. Like, it's amazing. So I will be linking all of her stuff down in the description. Please go show her some love. Go yell at her if she's mean to the characters, because we all know authors love being yelled at. We're like that. We all love it. I've totally never given anyone a reason to yell at me. Never. I'm not that kind of writer. Totally not. Emma Stone, look at me. But anyway, that is all for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you all stay safe. Don't sell your soul. Drink lots of coffee, maybe sprinkle a little water in there. And if you see some mimics in your home, see what they do. Maybe interact with them, maybe don't. But whatever you do, make sure you submit your encounter. Smooth, right? Was that smooth enough? Bye!